Hello everyone. During my time where I look for a topic to write on for my monthly essay, I came across somebody claiming that Christmas has pagan influence or pagan origins, and so I thought that's interesting or weird or doesn't sound right, so I did a bit of research and I wrote a little short essay on just a few of the Christmas traditions that we have, and whether or not they do in fact have pagan influence. And so yeah, just thought I'd record a short video explaining the essay. So the first Christmas tradition that I take up is the date, December 25th. So of course, we don't keep records, or there are no records of the very first Christmas. Okay, it's a tradition that arose organically, and it happened really early on in the church's lifetime, and we don't have exact records. So where did this date come from? Well, some atheists will claim it came from Saturnalia. Okay, Saturnalia was a prominent ancient pagan holiday celebrating the god Saturn, the Roman god Saturn, that is. And the problem is that the dates don't match for this claim. So 5th century author Macrobius, sorry, I just got my notes here, that's why I keep looking down. 5th century author Macrobius writes Saturnalia was celebrated usually 3 days, starting on December 17th. And sometimes they even celebrate up to a week, right? So December 17th to the 23rd, but it never extended to the 25th, Christmas. So the closeness in the calendar date is just merely a coincidence. The next one is Sol Invictus. Now, there is another Roman celebration called Sol Invictus that happened on the 25th of December, so the date's actually correct. Sol Invictus is known as the unconquerable sun god, so you can see there's maybe some parallels between Christian imagery of God being like the light of the world or like the rising sun, kind of comparison there to Sol Invictus. It's kind of similar. So the problem this time in terms of the date of the 25th comes down to chronology, right? So the earliest mention that we have of Christmas being on the 25th of December is the Philocalian calendar, also known as the chronograph of 354. It's just a document that has a whole bunch of things in it, but it mentions Christmas being on the 25th. But the ironic thing is it also is the first document we have mentioning Sol Invictus on the 25th. So it's equally likely that the Christians placed their Christmas celebration on the Sol Invictus day as the Romans placing Sol Invictus on the Christians' Christmas day, right? It's equally likely. So that's not really proof either way. Then the last one is people will claim that December 25th was taken from Yule, some sort of like winter solstice celebration. Now, this doesn't really make sense at all, right? Because Christianity started in like the ancient Near East, and Yule was celebrated in like Scandinavia. It's like really far apart. And so because we have the chronograph of 354, we know that Christmas was celebrated at least as early as 354. And there's a guy called John Chrysostom, I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, he mentioned when he wrote, he was born 347, so he was born just a few years before our chronograph there. And he mentions Christmas, and he doesn't mention it, he does mention December 25th, and he mentions that it was a long time tradition. So that, I'm assuming that it did not appear within like 10, 20 years before he wrote, right? It's a long time tradition. Christianity didn't spread to Scandinavia until 1710, right? English Archbishop Willibrord, it's a weird name, traveled to Denmark as a missionary, first missionary to spread Christianity to Scandinavia. And Scandinavia had a very strong like honor, like warrior culture, and so they kind of rejected the softness and the forgiveness aspects of Christianity, and they didn't really Christianity didn't receive widespread acceptance in Scandinavia until 250 years later by Harold Bluetooth, which yes, the Bluetooth devices are actually named after him. And this Christianization is recorded on a really cool runic gelling stone. It's like this giant rock with like runes carved into it. And you can still see it. I think it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And yeah, it shows like that history. So yeah, the chronology really does not work out for Yule. So what is the real reason we have December 25th? Well, the prevailing theory is that in the ancient Near East, the Jews had a folk belief that prophets would die on the same day they're conceived. So just like Christmas, we kind of lost the date of the crucifixion, but Jews were pretty sure it was March 25th. So what they did is they just counted forward 9 months from March 25th, which is December 25th. So that's just how they got the day. No pagan influence there. Next up, I wanted to talk about Christmas trees. Now, Christmas trees on the surface might seem like a pagan thing, right? You're like decorating a tree and like putting gifts under it, like sort of like a shrine, or like maybe like some sort of, I don't know, it's like a weird tradition. I found three main theories as to why Christmas trees exist, and none of them have to do with paganism. So the first is the idea of a paradise play. So in the Catholic Church, every saint has a feast day where they're celebrated. Now, Adam and Eve are considered saints. They're our first parents, and their feast day is actually December 24th. And so on their feast day, in the Middle Ages, people would often have plays, right, where they'd reenact the scene of the fall. So if you need to reenact the scene of the fall, you need a tree, right, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where the fruit was eaten off of. And so what they would do is, because it's the middle of the winter, all the other trees are kind of like dead. They would take the evergreen tree, like the pine tree, which is green all the year round, and they'd put that in the place where they're doing the play. They'd put apples on it, right? Apple, just like a fruit that lasts long into the winter, I guess. And that would be like the forbidden fruit. And then they'd use that for the paradise play. And then, well, the next day, the play is over. So we can, on December 25th, we can take the tree, maybe put it into someone's house, or eat the apples off of it, right? Because we're done using it. And then over time, the pine tree was used, and just decorations were added, and that's how they came to be. The second theory has to do with Martin Luther. Now, this is a folk tale again, but it has to do with Martin Luther. He's walking home at Christmas time in the snow, and he's kind of all of a sudden just awestruck by the way the moonlight and the stars kind of are shining against the snow-covered trees, and he's like, wow, I need to show my family this. So instead of doing the easy thing and bringing his family outside, he like cut down a small tree, an evergreen, and brought it inside and decorated it with like tinsel and stuff to like kind of recreate the moonlight scene. There's also a folk tale about him like using the evergreen tree, how it's green all the year round, as like a teaching point for his kids, to show that, well, our faith in Christ should be evergreen even in tough times, right? Then the third one has to do with Saint Boniface. This one's the craziest of the three. And so St. Boniface lived 675 to 754 AD, and he apparently saw a bunch of pagans worshipping an oak tree. Apparently the oak tree belonged to Thor. Now he wanted to like stop the pagan worship of the tree, so he's like, I'm gonna cut this down. Pagans are like, don't do that. He's gonna like strike you down. I think Thor is like the lightning guy, or is that Zeus? I don't remember. Anyways, you're gonna get struck down, and he's like, well, bet, I'll try. And he cuts it down, nothing happens. He's like, see, told ya. And then in, like, out of the trunk, the cut down trunk of the oak tree, it said that an evergreen tree grew. And that evergreen tree came to symbolize like Christian sovereignty over paganism, and was used as a Christmas thing. So yeah, pretty interesting. Last one that I wanted to talk about was Santa Claus. So again, old guy, big white beard, red suit. Is this like Odin or Zeus or something? No. So it's based off of a guy, you probably know the story, like Saint Nick. He was a real person, right? Saint Nicholas of Myra lived 270 to 343 AD, and he was very famous for his habit of gift giving. So one of the more famous stories is that there's three girls who are very poor and have a debt, and they are almost being forced into prostitution to pay their debt. Then he comes along with these gold coins and socks, and one sock full of gold for each of the three, and he throws them in the window, and they kind of get off on their debt, right? So that's what Santa's based on, and his feast day, I forget what it was, I think early December, maybe December 6th. It was celebrated in a lot of the Christian world, Christian Europe, and one of those places was the Netherlands. And so when the Dutch colonized America, you maybe don't know this, but New York City actually used to be called New Amsterdam. It was settled by Dutch people, and so they brought their traditions with them, right? The feast day of St. Nicholas, which they called in Dutch Sinterklaas. Or I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas. Anyways, Christmas was getting a bit too rowdy, to be honest. And so they moved St. Nicholas's feast day, which, because he was a gift-giving saint, they kind of celebrated his feast day by gift-giving. They moved that day to Christmas to kind of make it more family-friendly, because they're, in New Amsterdam, or like a new they're in America. They can kind of mix up the traditions a little bit. They have I guess they have the authority to do that. There's not like that many people that will object to it. And so they made Christmas more family friendly by moving St. Nick's Day to Christmas. And then over time, things just kind of got changed. And the way he was portrayed in media kind of just added the red suit, and it added the sleigh and the reindeer, and kind of just, it morphed from there. So that's where he comes from. Now, those are the three kind of big traditions I wanted to address. Those are like the main ones. But I wanted to dig a little bit more into like the philosophy, I guess, behind people claiming this, right? When I say this, I mean that Christianity has pagan influence. Now, is it really, even, let's just concede the point for a second. Let's just say, what if Christmas had pagan influence? What's the big deal, right? I mean, the Christian church is known for taking pagan stuff and using what they find for good. And the Bible actually sets a biblical precedent for this. So it has been found by historians that the book of Proverbs heavily emulates an earlier Egyptian book called the Instruction of Amenenope. Something like that. Anyways, so does that make the book of Proverbs evil because King Solomon copied from an Egyptian book? No, right? He just took what he found in the book, that it was good, and he thought it was godly and aligned with Judaism and with Christianity. He took it and he used it, and that's fine. He just reappropriated it and kind of dedicated it to God. So that's really not a big deal. Now, if you want to make the point that anything that pagans do, Christians should be set apart and should not do those things, well, then you're in for, it doesn't make any sense. Right? You're in for like a crazy time, because then you won't be able to build bonfires. You won't be able to dance, right? Those things are both heavily featured in pagan rituals and celebrations. Singing together, can't do that. And you also can't hang up your pictures of your parents or grandparents, because that's like ancestor worship. So there's a lot of things you can't do. So obviously that logic doesn't make sense. Now, when atheists claim that Christianity has pagan influence, they kind of say it in like a snide, kind of like gotcha kind of way. What the undertones and like if you read between the lines, what they're trying to say is that Christianity isn't special, and it's just like all the other world religions, and therefore your belief in Christianity is unfounded and it's irrational. And the problem with that is that it just doesn't work like that, right? The people that make those snide remarks, like, the reason they're making them is just to make themselves feel better about their unbelief, right? The types of unbelievers that kind of are hung up on facts, but if you prove the facts to them, they'd be ready to accept Christianity. They're not the type of people that make those remarks, right? The people that make those kind of remarks, the snide remarks against Christians, are people that have issues with hardness of heart, right? They maybe know deep down that it's very possible that God is real and that they owe their life to Him. But they aren't willing to accept that because they love their sin, or they don't want to live a certain way, and they want to keep doing whatever they want to do. They don't want to be restricted in their freedoms, right? They want to enjoy the things that life has to offer. And yeah, I think that's sad, and the best you can do is pray for them, and don't dignify them with a strong response, I guess, against those kind of remarks. Just kind of, yeah, don't give them the luxury, or not the luxury, the enjoyment. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, Christmas, no pagan influence, as far as I can tell. Yeah, thanks for listening, and subscribe to the newsletter.